In this video, I'm going to explain a new Conan the Mighty Pig glitch that randomizes truffle locations. It's called Truffle Shuffle, but first we'll start by explaining a different glitch. Conan the Mighty Pig has 345 truffles, split up among different maps. You can travel between these maps by using the portals that link them, but the truffles you're carrying do not stay with you through portals. If you use a portal while you have any truffles in your inventory, they'll just get thrown away. But they've already been removed from the list of truffles in the level, and yet you haven't deposited them at a barrel to save them yet. When you come back to the map, there aren't as many truffles as there should be. So the game does a quick calculation. First, it takes the total number of truffles that are supposed to be on the map, and subtracts the amount that the player has collected. Then it subtracts any truffles in the truffle list, which is the truffles that are physically present in the level. The number left over is the number of truffles that should be in the level, but aren't. The game needs to add those truffles to the level, and it does so, randomly choosing from a set of potential positions. Here you can see those positions marked with an X. When placing truffles, the game will randomly pick from these locations to determine where to put them. Now, let's go into a little more depth about the portal transition. Here I have a timeline of what you'd expect is going on while going through a portal. Because there is a brief animation before you actually transition to the next level, you'd expect that the game simply waits for that animation to play out, and then after it finishes, it loads the next level. However, this is what actually happens. Your inventory switches to the next level before you actually enter the map, but you're still physically in the previous level. We know your held truffles are thrown out the moment you use a portal, and that happens when your inventory switches. Since your inventory changes but you're still in a level, you can grab truffles before you actually load into the next level, and they'll stay in your inventory. You'll notice that nothing actually happens to the inventory when the map switches because the inventory switches separate from the map. See how the truffle was grabbed after the inventory switched to the next level? So nothing's really happening to the inventory when you switch between the last map and the next one. When you go back to the level you were just on, you'll notice that the truffle that you grabbed is still there, even if you deposited it in the next level. Now, the initial assumption is that the level data gets saved when you enter the portal, so anything you do will be ignored. But the actual answer is a bit more nuanced. Your truffle list is constantly updating as you play through a level. When you collect a truffle, its coordinates get checked against the truffle list for the level you're on, and those coordinates are removed from the list, so that way the truffles won't spawn there again. But during the portal animation, the game switches that list to the next level instead. It then can't find any missing truffles and nothing happens. Then, since the truffle wasn't removed from the list, it will spawn there again next time the level is loaded. This is what we call a truffle relay. Here's your note card. And now, we're going to answer a strange question. How could this glitch cause the game to completely randomize all of the truffles in the level you're heading to? Well, as it so happens, when you do a truffle relay to a map you've never visited before, the game does not load the preset truffles. Instead, it scatters all of them randomly, as if they got stolen. When it's your first time in a level, the game has to create a copy of the preset truffle list. Then, from that point onwards, it will always load the copy it made. So, how does the game figure out if it needs to load the preset list or load the copy? Well, all levels are initialized with no truffles, so the game knows it needs to create a new list if the list is empty. But there's a slight problem with this. Yes, the list is empty when it's your first time visiting the level, but it's also empty after you've collected all of the level's truffles, which would then spawn a whole new set of truffles after you've collected all of them. So get ready for a weird solution. The game checks if the truffle list is empty. Not if it's actually empty as in it contains nothing, but it literally checks if it says the word empty. Now this is certainly confusing since this is supposed to be a list of coordinates after all, and coordinates need to be numbers. But as long as the list is replaced with actual coordinates by the time you enter the level, then it works. So when it's your first time entering the level, the game knows because the string says empty, and that prompts the game to copy the preset. Then, once you've collected all of the truffles, the string is actually empty, but it won't respawn them again since it doesn't say the word empty. And the funny thing is, this method actually works perfectly. But for absolutely no reason, each level actually has two truffle lists under different names. And when I say for no reason, I mean it. These lists just go back and forth, updating each other so that way they're always identical. The only difference between them is that at the start of the game, this list says empty, and this list is empty. Spawning in the original truffles is an operation that starts with this list and then gets copied to the other list. and that happens right when you load into the level. Collecting a truffle is an operation that searches through this list and then copies over to the other list. Since we do it before loading into the level, this list never had the chance to get the truffle information from this list. But this list still sends all of its information to the other list. And now, when the game checks if the truffle list is empty, it finds that it isn't, because it's actually empty, which must mean that the truffle list does not need to be created. And then, the level loads without any truffles. But luckily the game knows just what to do when there's not enough truffles on the map. It checks the equation, and this equation tells it that it needs to spawn 30 truffles, or as many as are in the map. So it does, randomly placing them throughout the map. This is the basis of Truffle Shuffle. But actually, there's a bug with the placement mechanism too. You may have noticed before that there's an extra truffle that spawns in every level after you collect all the truffles and reload the level. And the same thing happens here. When the game checks how many truffles are on the map, it uses a command called count living. This function is intended to be used on a list with living and not living elements. But when you collect the truffles, it removes them from the list. It's not like it's a list with 0 living elements, it's just an empty list. This isn't supposed to happen, so the command returns -1, since it doesn't even have a list to check. So the game returns -1 for the amount of truffles on the map, which brings the total amount to spawn up to 31. So we can add that to the note card. And now, the final element of this glitch is exclusive to Heart of the Forest. It's caused by a typo, so there really isn't much to explain as to why it happens. There's 2 separate elements to the truffle placements. First, they're placed, and then, in a separate function, they're saved. Here's the list of the code for each level's saving mechanism. Note that they aren't all constantly running, only the one for the level that needs truffles saved to it. The game saves the truffles by looping through all of the truffles it just placed, and then adding them one by one to the saved list to expand the list. Except, the game is saving them all to Heart of the Forest level data, because the code doesn't specify which level they're supposed to be saving to. It seems like it would completely break the whole thing, but actually when it saves to the second truffle list, it saves to the correct one. So it goes something like this. The game takes your current truffle list and the list of truffles it just placed. It appends the first truffle that it needs to add, and then it saves this new list to Heart of the Forest's truffle data. Then Heart of the Forest saves it to the correct level. But this list was never saved to, so it just brings up the same list from the start and adds the next truffle. When it saves to Heart of the Forest's level data, it pretty much replaces the truffle that it just added, and then it saves it to the level it's supposed to go to. It will repeat this for as many truffles as it needs to save, but it's not actually expanding the list. On levels other than Heart of the Forest, if they place multiple truffles that aren't saved to the level list, it will only save one at a time, and all of the others will be randomized. So, what happens when you load into Heart of the Forest after these levels have been saving their data to it? Well, nothing at first, because loading levels is done from the list that is correctly saved to. But remember how collecting truffles starts from this list and then saves to the other one? Well, when we do a truffle relay, it pulls up the list that all of the levels have been mistakenly saving to. So, depending on the level you last had a truffle saved to, it will check if the truffle you pick up matches any truffles in that level, and then save that list to the other list, and then that list gets loaded. That list which contains truffle coordinates of a completely different level, and suddenly Heart of the Forest's truffles are replaced with the truffles from another level, and that looks something like this. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting glitch, at least by Conan standards. But if you want to see just how this is going to impact speedrunning, you'll have to wait and see. While we aren't yet sure if list replacement will be used in speedrunning, Truffle Shuffle already is. Clearing Heart of the Forest is around 45 seconds faster on average with Truffle Shuffle, with the potential for even more time saved with good RNG. It seems a little unintuitive that it's so much faster, given that Heart of the Forest actually has 95 possible locations with Truffle Shuffle. But a lot of the truffle locations are simply better than the ones on the original map. Take this location for example. You're always going to get a truffle here with the original map. During a run, this will make you get rid of your boar power-up. But there's only a chance of one spawning in here with Truffle Shuffle. If it doesn't, you can keep your boar power-up all the way until you get the next one. Or this location for example. This is actually the slowest truffle in the game, but with Truffle Shuffle, it's not even a potential option. Yip Dippy has already set a new record using this tech, but there is plenty more time to save. It might even bring us close to breaking the 20-minute barrier, but we'll have to see.